I think Rashad is the only person that basically have a chance of beating him because Rashad trained with him before, so Rashad knows. So other than Rashad, I don't see anybody beating this kid straight up because I thought he was all hype. Straight up, I'm keeping it real there. I thought he was all hype. The kid is tough. He's very talented. He even hit me one of those spinning back elbows. It didn't hurt, but he still hit me with it. I trained against it, and I thought I had his number.
ESPN1080.com presents Round 3, your show that covers all of MMA's latest news. I'm Eric Lopez, alongside Carson Ingle, and then our MMA guru, Brian Wininger, who still has a job here at 1080. And that man we just heard was none other than Rampage Jackson following his defeat.
Right, I'm here. I'm here, and like I said before on your Insider show, I'm not going to lie, but when Rampage was throwing those haymakers, I held my breath.
You held my breath.
It was one of those fights where it seemed like Rampage was going to be in it until someone won. You know what I mean? And it was, but at the end of the day, though, Jon Jones looked scary.
Yeah, I don't know why you were worried.
Did he? Well,
let's talk about
partly I was worried because I put my career on the line.
But, yeah, that's a little bit.
but it was pretty
in your mouth.
But,
I mean, first of all, of course, people can reach out to Brian Wininger where?
ESPN Dub. And
now, of course, Round 3 you can find on YouTube on ESPN1080.com. Plus, it'll also be on the brand new ESPN 10 Insiders Facebook page.
There you go. I just saw that pop up there.
Yeah, it'll be on the ESPN 1080.
Taking over the social media end.
Just go find it. Go click on ESPN 1080 Insiders on Facebook and click like, and you'll be getting all the information from Round 3 as well as the Insider shows on Sunday mornings, and Carson's involved in that. Carson, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the main event. Of course, Jon Jones defeating Rampage Jackson, finishing him off in the fourth round with the submission.
How's it taste, Lopez? Your boy.
It was an all right fight, but I will say this.
Now,
let's say this, though. I mean, Jones was good. He was solid. But I agree with you now, Brian. Let's talk about this. Rampage was a little tentative in this fight. I thought he had some chances there that he did not take advantage of. There's I believe it was a second or third round. He had some nice leg kicks on Jon Jones. It seems like Jones at times was trying to be a little too cute there, and Rampage with one shot could have had him there.
Well, and the cuteness right there, that's what was making me nervous. He was doing his best Anderson Silva impersonation, and I love Jon Jones. I do think he's the next big thing, but he's not Anderson Silva level yet. But you're right, Rampage was...
See, I think I disagree. I think he already is.
Well, no, I think that's premature.
I think he's already Anderson Silva.
I think he's got all the
I think if Anderson Silva was at his weight, came in there right now, I think Jon Jones would beat him down easily.
I think that too, but you know what? It's hard to argue with a guy like Anderson Silva who's defended his belt, 11 times?
I mean, that's fine. You
times?
can look at I'm just saying, I'm throwing records out the door. I'm looking at the two fighters. I think Jon Jones
really
was
that impressed?
Absolutely. I think it wasn't even close. I don't think Jackson had a shot. I don't think it was close at any point in that fight.
Oh, I think there's openings there that I think
Jones
Rampage
dominated the fight.
Jones
Jackson couldn't find an opportunity.
Well, and that was the thing. Jones' corner the whole time. You could hear him saying, "Find your range, get in there." And we talked about it all last show, how that huge 11.5-inch reach advantage that Jon Jones possessed over Rampage was just going to be crucial in the fight, and it was. And Jon Jones was trying to take Rampage down. He was doing a great job at stuffing the takedown, but Jon Jones came out and proved that he is the best light heavyweight.
I mean, Jones even tried to go for a submission standing up in the second round.
Right, he pulled guard out of nowhere.
Got it against the cage, got Rampage cut. I think shortly after that, the spinning back elbow that Rampage referenced there as well. I mean, to end the round, there were so many different things that Jon Jones did in that fight that we don't see anyone else do in mixed martial arts.
Exactly, and Jon Jones is the LeBron James of mixed martial arts. He really is. He's that just freak athlete that just comes in there. He's 24, young. The sky is the limit with him.
Ooh, there you go. See, I remember you were going to tell me that you think he's the LeBron James. Does that mean he's going to take his talents
with a belt,
with
a championship?
Is he going to take his talent somewhere else? Then is Jon Jones?
No.
But I mean, Rampage and Jones. Of course, now Jones will fight Rashad Evans, who stepped into the ring there, and there's always tension there.
Oh yeah.
No one knows Jon Jones better than Rashad Evans.
Right. And of course, the tension stems back from the Jackson camp, which Jon Jones joined. that's a mouthful, joined after when Rashad was there, and they formed and developed a partnership, and there was a lot of talk before that, hey, I would never fight Jon Jones. That's what Rashad kept saying, but Jon Jones, I won't fight Rashad unless it's for the belt kind of thing, and a couple months ago before this fight, how Rashad and Jones were supposed to fight, and then that never happened because Rashad pulled out with an injury. So, now we're going to have this fight. Of course, Jon Jones sticking with Greg Jackson's camp, and Rashad having to take his talents, if you will, to a multiple venue of different camps. He's training with George St. Pierre in Canada.
Right.
He's everywhere. He's everywhere. So there is bad blood. And like what Jon Jones said after the fight, he was ticked that Rashad got in the octagon and quote unquote ruined his special night.
I don't know how he ruined it. I mean, he was just there. Isn't that what they usually do from
now? No. That's that's more of a boxing thing. I haven't seen that. I mean, maybe a couple of times I've seen that in UFC, but that's not very common, I don't think.
Yeah, but I think right now this is where Jon Jones' career really begins, because he is now going to defend his belt for the second time. No one has done that since '07, since Chuck Liddell. So you've had four years in between, and 6 different champions who Rampage, to that point, was the only one to defend his belt once before Chuck Liddell. So, you've had a division which is highly regarded as the best division in the sports with the most turnaround at champion. So right now, Jon Jones is going to have to prove himself that he really belongs, and it's not going to get easier from here.
Chuck Liddell, we have some news on Chuck Liddell coming up later on this show, which we'll discuss. You mentioned not going to get easier. So, Rashad Evans, give me an early tease on what do you think the timetable is, when this fight will occur? And then give me your early kind of look ahead to this match.
I think this fight is going to happen early 2012, and I liked Rampage's chances better than I did against with Jon Jones, better than I do Rashad.
Really?
Yes, just because
even though Rashad has known him, has trained him, knows.
Yeah,
him.
Just because I think Rashad just has a glass jaw.
Yeah.
And that's just been his downfall. He's a great athlete, great wrestler. Guess what? Jon Jones is a better athlete, better wrestler. And he can strike with the best of them. So I think Rashad's chin is going to get tested, and I don't see him.
Listen,
I don't see him beating Jon Jones at all.
I give a little bit better shot to Rashad. I agree with everything you said there. I think Jon Jones will still handle him easily, but I thought that Rampage Jackson was a fraud. So I give a little more respect to Rashad Evans than that.
Well, I think, but that's just a testament on how good Jon Jones is.
You're right. It's not a good matchup.
It is. Rampage quickly understood what kind of beast he was in that octagon with. And that's why he was timid. He came out and he admits it after the fight. He admits it. He thought this kid was all hype. Now he's calling him the next Anderson Silva.
Right.
And he says that he's here to stay.
I thought he handled himself pretty well.
He did.
He gave him a good fight. What did you think of the audience? It seemed at times they were pro-Rampage. Did you get that sense?
No, yeah.
Which was very interesting.
It was very interesting. And it's funny why when you're on top, people just hate you for no reason. Jon Jones was the most popular guy going up through the ranks, and now that he's finally reached the pinnacle, it was very
maybe that was what was going on in Denver. I mean, where I was at the sports bar I was at, it was very pro-Jones there. When he won, there was an erupting of cheers. Sometimes I've seen those sports bars turn real quick, and there's a loud chorus of boos. But everyone was in favor, at least here in Orlando, I guess,
right,
for Bones Jones.
And of course, everyone loves Rampage anyway, so it's going to be hard to find someone that he's going to get booed up against anyways. But
what'd you think of his request to go get Shogun in Japan? Tell Dana White, make it happen. Do you think it'll happen?
Shogun, no. Because Shogun's fighting in November against...
Sure, but maybe down the road. I think that's what Rampage is looking.
Yeah, he's out of his contract, so... or he's going to be in his contract, but what you're talking about on the UFC card in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think Rampage will be on that card because he's such a big name in Japan. I don't think he's going to fight Shogun.
No? They go a different direction?
No, they're going to have to.
They can give him an easier matchup, I think, than Shogun.
Right.
Wouldn't you say, to try to make sure that he gets that win? I think that's important for him there in that country.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think before he gets Shogun, though, he's going to fight someone else. I really do. At this point, I'm not sure, but...
If you were a matchmaker, who would you like to see him go against?
Oh, wow, that's interesting. You know what? I would like to see him fight a guy like Phil Davis. A new up-and-coming guy, wrestler from San Diego, real good athlete guy. He's 8-0. I'd like them to see a guy like Phil Davis. That'd be great.
Should be interesting to see what happens. Carson, your thoughts on the rest of the card? I see what you two think. It was kind of underwhelming. I don't think a lot of people really anything jumped out. Obviously, Hughes, your upset pick did not work out, Brian.
Right, but I didn't really believe in that pick.
You didn't
anyway,
believe
no.
it? Just throw it out there for show.
Yeah.
Got knocked out. Dana White thinks it's his last fight. Do you agree?
I agree. Because what Hughes was talking about after the fight was that he kind of wants the UFC to put him up on a shelf per se, and maybe take a year. It's hard to say. It's really hard to nail these guys down and say they're completely done, especially with a guy like Matt Hughes, who wasn't like he was getting knocked out. Yeah, he was getting beat down, but he wasn't. His health, like with Chuck Liddell and Vanderlei, them constantly getting knocked out. That's more of a health issue. So I could see Matt Hughes coming back, but I don't think any time within the next year.
Maybe getting some sort of a Legends fight. You look at the rest of the card. I think that the one other fight on there that was a little bit exciting, at least, due sort of to the finish of it, at least, was Nate Diaz and Takanori Gomi. Diaz getting the armbar submission in round 1, but it doesn't say too much, just because I thought that Gomi looked kind of out of place and not really in fighting shape, not really ready to go.
Right. Well, and that's the thing I noticed with that high altitude in Denver. There was 2 heavyweight fights on that card.
Oh, well, those.
And, oh, my God, those guys were gassed.
They were awful fights. Both of the heavyweight fights, Travis Brown, Rob Broughton, Ben Rothwell, Mark Hunt.
Rothwell was just second round laying on top of Hunt. And I don't know if the UFC, but I would think if I was the UFC, I would take a good hard look at that next time they're going to be in some high altitude like that. Maybe stick to the lesser weights.
Well, personally, I was shocked, and I know that Rothwell had a 15-month layoff. I was shocked that Mark Hunt, won that fight.
Yeah.
Because he was 6-7 in his career. Now he, in his early days, perhaps we should say, in the octagon, he had a couple nice wins, but nothing really recently at all. And that really, I think, surprised me more than anything. I know that he beat, I think he beat Silva at Vanderlei Silva at one point early on in his career in Pride, but I was just and I believe Crow Cop too, so a couple good wins there for him early in his career, but here's a guy that's lost, 6 out of his last 8 fights, and you're thinking, well, this guy doesn't have anything.
Right.
Rothwell used to be a pretty decent fighter in the heavyweight division, maybe a top 10 fighter in the class.
You're right, and not to mention Mark Hunt's kind of an undersized heavyweight. But what I do want to touch on is Josh Koscheck. His next fight, I almost guarantee it's going to be at middleweight against Chris Lieben.
Really?
The boy from Ultimate Fighter 1. Yeah, I think he's going to move up, and the UFC is going to make that fight happen, which, talk about an exciting fight. That fight right there at 185, which is what they were fighting out back in 05, I think that is going to be a very, very exciting fight between 2 guys who don't really like each other.
Yeah, but one more note on those heavyweight fights.
Yeah.
Both go decision. I mean, that was just like prolonging. It was like watching, someone die a slow death. I mean, both guys go 3 rounds. The fact that neither could do anything against the other was just terrible watching. And at times, I had to turn away from the screen. I couldn't even watch that.
Main event was great, though.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of notes from the pay-per-view. UFC was in Denver. We asked why. Because that was where the first UFC event ever took place in Nichols Arena, November of 1993. Yep. So a little nostalgic. Also, Dana White, he's a little richer today, as usual. $2 million in the gate.
For? Okay.
UFC 135, the highest of the year, surpassing 133, which made $1.5 million. So another successful night for Mr. White and company, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Jon Jones winning decisively like that.
Yeah.
Can't be much better for the UFC.
We got an action-packed show here, folks. We got Ultimate Fighter. ESPN1080.com here, round 3. Your show for all MMA news. Eric Lopez alongside Carson Ingle and Brian Wininger. Just a reminder, of course, check out ESPN1080.com Insider Show Sundays, 10 to 11 in the morning on ESPN 1080 Orlando, and this Sunday is unique because Brian Wininger will be one of the hosts on the show.
Getting my second hosting gig.
I know, you did Roger Williams,
Roger
old school.
Yeah, but I'm stoked to do your show.
You're going to be doing the show with Mr.
Especially in this Tampa-Boston pennant race.
Ooh, tight.
Or postseason race, yeah.
Baseball playoffs, you're going to hit guys, you're going to hit that up. Of course, myself and Carson will be in Gainesville, Florida for number 2.
Doing what?
Alabama, covering Alabama, Florida. Carson will be in the stands. I will be in the press box. We'll have all the angles covered between Gators and the Crimson Tide. Carson's SEC debut.
Really?
Yeah.
I really don't feel like it's... I mean, I'm very excited about this. I just don't know if it's a pertinent topic to discuss on round 3.
Right, exactly.
The only reason I bring it up is because later on ESPN1080.com, on this very site, and on YouTube, myself and Brian Wininger are going to have a preview of the Gators-Alabama game, aren't we?
Right. With Roger Franklin Williams and Ken Allen. It should be good. It should be fun.
That's their own little battle there in the octagon. So that's the story.
But you got some news, right?
We got some legendary news. Chuck Liddell, you mentioned in the previous segment.
Last guy to defend his belt more than twice.
That's correct. He was in the news. He was interviewed and admitted that he still has an itch.
Of course he does.
To fight.
Of course he does.
In the octagon. He acknowledged that, though, he's obviously right now his job is basically promoting the sport as a spokesman. Wants the sport to do well. He's very excited.
Ambassador.
He said he was excited about the deal with Fox. It's a huge thing for the sport. He's very happy about it. He just wants the sport to do well.
It's a spokesman. He's like when Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus tee off at the first tee at Augusta Masters Week. It just.
You want him to throw the first punch on our area?
It looks a quite bit different than that, though. But that's kind of what it's like.
Well, yeah, no, he was excited about it. He admitted he's got a little itch. That kind of gave him a little, oh, man, I wish I could be out there.
That does not surprise me one bit.
You're not surprised?
No,
Tell me why.
Of course not, because that guy's a fighter. That guy was going to want to fight till he's 85 years old. You just can't, that's who he is. And so now that he's not fighting, what else does he do? I mean, yeah, he's making a lot of money walking around, promoting the sport in UFC, but man, that guy's a fighter. That's it. But Dana White's his best friend, so it's not a business issue of him fighting; it's a health issue. And Dana White knows, just like the rest of us, that Chuck's done. He's done. But I don't see him fighting in the octagon ever again. Ever. Dana White's not going to let that happen. If Dana White's saying that Chuck Liddell needed to retire, 2 years ago he was saying that?
I think this is another area where Dana White avoids a pitfall of boxing. Every fighter always wants to keep fighting. Boxers, we've seen this forever. They all want to fight. They all want to keep fighting. It's no different with guys that do mixed martial arts now, as we're discovering. But the thing is Dana's not going to let them get to that point where they're out there just fighting to fight and getting beaten, and it just becomes sort of a disgraceful thing for the fighter and for the organization. White's not going to let that happen.
Right, and it's true because A, White cares about these fighters, and B, he doesn't need to rehash these old superstars to sell pay-per-views anymore. He's got his product. The UFC is so good enough that he doesn't need to make these quote-unquote freak fights that we used to see with Tank Abbott and Ken Shamrock and all these guys back in the old school days just because they were names. That's not how mixed martial arts is anymore.
What is Chuck Liddell's legacy?
I believe Chuck Liddell's legacy he is the most important fighter. I think he's the most important fighter in the UFC's history of all time. Just because he was he was in his prime, in his peak, winning in spectacular fashion in the best division, the most light heavyweight division in the UFC, and he had this image about him, and he was this great marketing tool, and he was perfect for the progression of the sport at that time, to build the sport and to make it more nationally recognizable.
Yeah, people love the guy. When it's all said and done, I don't think he'll be considered one of the greatest fighters of all time, but he will be considered one of the most important people for the sport ever, in a certain type of guy. When you look at guys that came along to make the sport what it is, he was just a compelling figure for people, and people latched onto that. He had the faux hawk,
the complete mohawk with the tattoo on the side of his head.
Yeah, there was an imagery thing that people just gravitated towards, and he was a great first name first star for the UFC to brand themselves upon and say, hey, this is what we're about. We're about this. Really a valiant warrior, a great personality, and Dana White, I don't think, could have asked for anything more in what Chuck Liddell gave the UFC.
No, and that's exactly right. I mean, not only was Chuck Liddell such a marketing tool, but he was the best champion up to that point. You know, you could argue Matt Hughes, but I think Chuck Liddell, because he always on the biggest stage, biggest pay-per-views in Vegas. I mean, him and Tito Ortiz, you know, but before Brock Lesnar and Randy Couture, that was the biggest, that was the biggest UFC fight of all time. So he can easily be regarded as one of the best of all time.
Something else I wanted to talk about. Yeah. UFC 139 just got announced.
Yeah.
Dan Henderson, Shogun Rua. This is going to be a great card behind them, I think. You've got Kung Lee and Vanderlei Silva.
You like that fight?
I do, just because I want to see. I kind of want to see Kung Lee get into the octagon, and I hope that he gets beat down, because he's kind of a clown, this guy. He's kind of like, he fights when he wants to. He goes off and makes these low-budget, terrible movies when he wants to. Now, he's got a great record in mixed martial arts. He's only lost once. He's been a guy in Strikeforce. He's an acclaimed kickboxer. But I'd like to see Wandy beat him up a little bit. And then you've got Uriah Faber. Everyone loves Uriah Faber. He's going to fight Brian Bowles. I think that's a solid bantamweight fight. And then Stephan Bonner's going to fight as well on the card.
See, I think that Kung Lee and Vanderlei fight, the loser of that fight is gone.
Right.
From the UFC, straight up.
But this is Kung Lee's first UFC fight, so he could be in the door, now out of the door, just like that.
Yeah, well, his first since, did he fight Rich Franklin?
This is his first fight in UFC.
Yeah, so I think, and Vanderlei is on that slippery slope too. If he's one of those guys who's been getting knocked out, and a guy just like Liddell who hasn't lost that itch to fight. So if he loses to Kung Lee, man, he's gone. Either or the loser of this is gone. He has to be.
No matter what.
No matter what, they've got to. There's no upside to these fighters anymore.
Now I had a question. Now the next UFC 136, I believe, is what, a week and a half?
Yep.
It's awfully quick turnaround.
No, yeah.
I mean, your thoughts on that? I mean, why so close? Do you agree with that? I mean, doesn't that hurt pay-per-view buys? Because a lot of people just spend money on 135. Maybe you can't afford to just spend 136 in a couple weeks.
They do this. They go in bunches where some months you'll have two pay-per-views. Some months you'll have a pay-per-view and a fight night, and then you go 2 months without even a card. So I think they just stack the cards. Now that you're getting into the fall, there's a lot of football's going on. There's just a lot of TV going on right now during this time. So I think that's really why the UFC decides to ultimately pile on fights during this time.
Yeah, I know we'll preview the card. I guess next week?
Yeah,
it's crazy, but I'm excited for that.
Really?
2 title fights. We mentioned how bad those heavyweight fights were on Saturday. Where you get 2. I like when the little guys go at it, because those guys, there's an athleticism there that you just can't find in the upper weight classes, and we've got the lightweight and the featherweight championship bouts. Those are going to be 2 tremendous fights.
Well, and that's a great segue. Because next segment, we got Kevin Danger Garcia breaking down those light divisions in the Ultimate Fighter.
Should be pretty good. That's next. You're listening to Round 3 here on ESPN 1080.com.
Yes, I love her like. Yes, I love her like.
ESPN Radio 1080, the team.
Welcome back to Round 3 here on ESPN 1080.com. ESPN 1080 Orlando here. Eric Lopez alongside Carson Ingle and Brian Wininger. And, of course, the Ultimate Fighter started last week. Brian, I know you were giggly. You were just giddy over it.
Best Ultimate Fighter ever.
Wow. Well, let's get into it, but we got an expert for that, don't we? We got someone on that's going to knows more about it than even you do.
Dude, yeah, it's our MMA expert, Kevin Danger Garcia, calling from the Keys. Kevin, what up, man?
Yeah, man, can you hear me?
Yeah, call from Key West. He might not have that good a reception, but he's our MMA expert. So, dude, about this Ultimate Fighter, man, there was 5 knockouts, 6 submissions, and 3 decisions. What did you think about that opening night?
Well, it just goes to show you how explosive these 2 divisions are going to be. I mean, just those few fights there, it sets the whole season up for you guys.
Yeah. Now, Kevin, for the audience that maybe are going to catch it on maybe this week, give some people kind of some things to look forward to this upcoming season.
All right. Well, definitely with the 35ers and the 45ers, what these divisions have to offer, a lot of these heavier weight classes don't. Explosion. You're going to see a lot more technique. We still have power, so you're going to see those knockouts. You're
And they're
see
swinging.
those. Oh yeah. They're going in there knocked out, and they're going to put on a show because all these guys have something to prove, and they all have good records. So they're just not any pushovers, you know.
And I think it's a good place for this show to go because it's kind of an untapped area, at least from the show's standpoint. And I think over the past few years, maybe it's gotten a little stale. Interest has declined. The fighters haven't been as good as when the show started. Now you get a whole untapped, a bunch of young prospects.
Absolutely. These guys are hungrier than ever. The past seasons, it's been something that is just repetition. These guys see the same thing every season. Well, now these new 35ers and 45ers, they're the first of their weight class to be on the show. So they're definitely going to show. They're definitely going to put up some good fights, and you're going to see some pretty awesome things.
Kevin, being a bantamweight fighter yourself, talk about what it means to have these weight divisions finally on this main stage at TUF and just being kind of spotlight in that whole thing. Like, what does it do for the division and as the fighters in general?
Well, now, being a 35er, we fought for these smaller shows, and these guys fight because they love to fight. They haven't seen those big paychecks,
Right.
And because of that reason, it keeps pushing these guys to keep getting better and better and better to work for these paychecks. So now that this division is going to be spotlighting us, we have so much to offer now. We work so hard and gain so much experience and fighting for these smaller shows. We're going to display everything we have possible to put on onto the UFC. We've been waiting for this since the WC has, that was kind of like our big dog,
right.
Now that UFC has put us under their wing, we're just gonna show these guys everything that what we're made of. It means a lot to the 35ers to finally be on the main stage.
Well, yeah, and I mean that's a great point because back when you were a 35, 45-pound fighter, you pretty much fought just because you loved the sport. Because back in those days, there was really no major league, quote unquote, like the UFC, where you guys can go into. So
Right.
Yeah, you're right. So all these guys worked their butts off just to fight, and now it's so great that these guys are on the main stage. But your boy Dustin Pegg made it into the house.
Absolutely, that's pretty awesome.
That's
I
pretty awesome.
I met Dustin Pegg back in 2009 when he actually started his fighting career as a professional fighter, anyways. And I watched him fight on two separate occasions, and this kid, from what I've seen him, has just made the scene. I mean, he's gone in there and picked his opponents apart, and it just shows that he's gotten better, and he really put on a heck of a fight. He showed a lot of good striking, and he's got a good ground game. So I'm pretty excited for him. He's put in the work, so he deserves it.
Explain to the people who may not know or may not follow this part of the sport as in-depthly, this show that's really gave it such a good tick and an upstart in popularity. I think an interesting thing that people don't know is a lot of these guys come in with good experience. I mean, you got one of the guys in the house this year in Brian Caraway. He's had a couple fights in the WECs, and I fought in Elite XC and Strikeforce. So some of these guys have fought on pretty big levels.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? Because that the UFC hasn't picked us up, we've had no choice but to fight for these other organizations. We fought for these. You look at 35ers in the Dream organization, where everybody from all around the world fights. So they have this experience that a lot of these other guys don't have.
Yeah. Now talk about this is the last season on Spike. It's going to move to Fox with some new wrinkles. Your thoughts now? This show's been going on for a long time on Spike. People are used to watching it on Spike. I know, Brian, you've watched it since the beginning, right?
And the little wrinkles, you're of course talking about how they're going to film 4 days and actually have a live event.
And have live events, yeah. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's just going to make the show even better. It's going to get to we're going to be able to pick the fight from what I understand, right? So it's really going to be interesting to see how these guys adapt in a short period of time, and we're going to really see what they're made of. They're not going to be able to train for these fighters that they pay for them in a like they would any other time.
Well,
so.
yeah, and plus, and that's the thing that the fans are actually going to be the matchmakers in this whole thing.
Right.
So that adds another dimension where you don't even know who you're going to have until the fans text or tweet or whatever they're going to do.
Right, absolutely. So you have to come prepared. You have to make every second possible that you're going to make the most of it. You can't be going into the house and wanting to party it up. If you're smart and you want to go far with this, you better make every second count.
Last question before we kind of let you go. Do you have a couple of maybe favorites or sleepers that people are not talking about on this show to people to look at and say, hey, you might end up on top by the end of this?
Well, I'm looking at hopefully my boy Dustin Pegg. He's gonna, I'm sure he's gonna take his time and really make use of it. John Dotson. He's a smaller 35er, but I don't know if you guys seen the body shot that he landed.
Oh, that crippled him. That kid was tough, wasn't he?
And that shows experience. I'm looking at Steven Stiller, who beat Michael Miller.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a sleeper. Everybody really underestimated him. So, it's hard to pick a favorite because all these guys are going to have a lot to offer.
Dude, what's with those Miller guys? Those Miller brothers, man. They're all the same. They just...
You know what? They're not evolving fighters. They're all the same. And you're exactly right. This is a new breed. You have to be more than just a ground guy, And it showed his hands, his hands didn't come up to the challenge. So at the end of the day, he got tagged and he didn't know how to react. That's why he got submitted. So you have to be that evolving fighter. You have to learn every aspect of this sport to do well.
And just like what happened Saturday night, a pretty good evolving fighter, Jon Jones, won the light heavyweight title, man. That's exactly where the progression of the sport's going. Kevin, I know you're in the Keys, man. I appreciate it. We look forward to hearing from you every week on this topic.
Absolutely, man.
So, good stuff, man. Enjoy the Keys, dude.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Later. Good stuff, man. He's
It's good to be in the Keys. There's nothing wrong with being
no,
in the
exactly.
Keys, I'll tell you what.
He was gracious enough to take the phone call, but it's gonna be the most exciting Ultimate Fighter.
Really?
It really is, man. It really is. I'm telling you.
Look at him, Carson.
I told you. That's what I was talking about before the break with the smaller fighters, the featherweights and the bantamweights.
Exactly.
I mean, these are great fights.
Yeah.
I know you're not as exposed to them as much, but we got to get you. You've seen some of the WC events.
Oh yeah. I've seen many of them.
I know our good friend exposed you to those.
AJ
in the past.
Wininger, good man.
I'm like, he's that good of a friend, but yeah, no, it's
no, not in that way.
No, seriously though, but
came out so wrong.
But no, man, I'm looking forward to this season. I really am. And there's
last one on Spike.
Well, and last one on Spike, and I was so impressed by how many guys just looked the part this season. Normally, you got these guys who, you know what I mean, kind of flabby, really, you don't see them as fighters. These guys were cut up, killers, all of them.
It makes sense because you mentioned a guy like Micah Miller who's fought in Dreams, the brother of Cole Miller, got knocked out. He didn't make the house.
Nope, didn't make the house, exactly. And that is, the fact that they brought back this elimination to start the show.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That right there makes sure you know that you've got the real deal going into that house.
What's your favorite Ultimate Fighter up to this point, then?
Wow,
Which season? Yeah.
Up to this point, I probably liked season 9, the UK against USA. That was Henderson and Bisping. Of course, I love the ending of that when Henderson knocked out of Bisping. But it was good though. But I really like Bisping and Mayhem Miller as coaches in this. You
like the choices?
It's going to be like a Rampage Rashad where people are going to kick doors in. There's going to be...
that was my favorite.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Carson, you have a favorite season?
I think for me, and I'm looking at them right now, and I look back at some of the seasons, and I remember. I think more than seasons, I remember guys that came out of the Ultimate Fighter and seeing them grow. I remember watching a guy like Ben Saunders, who's here from Orlando, growing out of the Ultimate Fighter. Unfortunately, he had some tough luck in the UFC and is out of the octagon. Brendan Schaub, remember watching him the year, of course. What's his
What, Kimbo?
Yeah,
the
Kimbo
heavyweight?
was in it. Thank you. I'm kind of glad that I kind of forgot Kimbo's name there for a minute. But Brendan Schaub fighting Roy Nelson, losing to Roy Nelson, but Schaub still being a viable fighter in the UFC. So that's what I kind of take away from each season is certain guys that are able to hang on. They always give maybe 3-4 guys contracts. Would you say?
Yeah. It's like a minor league showcase for the UFC. Right. Where every single year you're going to get a handful of guys, who last a little bit in the UFC and eventually become champions. Forrest Griffin, Rashad Evans, the list goes on. It's a breeding ground, and it translates. It actually produces legit fighters.
And we will have constant updates on this show every week. When up to the minute date, breaking news, it's going to be good. So we're out of time already. Where did time go, Carson?
Time went where it went.
Boom.
It went quick. So that is it. We thank our great guest.
Yeah, no, Kevin Danger Garcia. He's going to join us every week to break down the Ultimate Fighter, so stay tuned. You're
going to want to have it here for all the latest on the Ultimate Fighter. So for Carson Ingle and Brian Wininger, I'm Eric Lopez. This has been another edition of Round 3 on ESPN1080.com on ESPN 1080 Orlando.